The diplomatic summit on Kareth Prime was supposed to be routine. George had been briefed extensively about the Varric Sprout, warrior-like beings with scales that shimmered like oil on water and long, powerful tails they considered sacred. What he hadn't been briefed on was what would happen if a human accidentally touched one. Eleanor stood beside him, her datapad clutched tightly as she reviewed the treaty terms. As the lead xenobiologist on the human delegation, she'd spent months preparing for this moment. The Varric's commander, Shkara, towered before them, nearly 8 feet of corded muscle, her violet scales catching the light of Kareth's twin suns through the crystalline walls. "The terms are acceptable," Shkara rumbled, her voice like gravel shifting in a landslide. She turned to retrieve the ceremonial signing stone, her thick tail sweeping behind her in a graceful arc. George stepped forward at the same moment, hand extended in greeting. His palm connected with the tip of her tail. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Shkara's entire body went rigid. Her pupils dilated until her eyes were nearly black. A low, thrumming sound, something between a purr and a growl, emanated from deep in her chest. The other Varric's warriors in the chamber immediately dropped to one knee, their heads bowed. "Oh shit," Eleanor whispered. George snatched his hand back as if burned. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to leave," one of the Varric's warriors hissed, his voice urgent. "Leave now. The commander has entered Keshtar. You must go." Eleanor grabbed George's arm, pulling him toward the exit. But Shkara's voice stopped them both. "No." The word was strained, almost painful. "The human, George. He stays." The chamber cleared in seconds, leaving only the three of them. Eleanor refused to abandon her colleague, despite the clear danger radiating from every line of Shkara's trembling form. "What did I do?" George asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Shkara's claws dug into the stone table before her. "Our tails, our bonding organs. When touched by one we recognize as compatible. It triggers Keshtar, the heat cycle, the mating fever." Her eyes locked onto George with an intensity that made him take an involuntary step backward. "And you, human, your scent, your genetic markers. My body has chosen you." Eleanor's scientific mind kicked into overdrive even as her heart raced. "Commander, surely there's a medical intervention? Something to counteract." "There's nothing," Shkara cut her off. "The cycle will run its course. 3 days, during which I will be compromised. My warriors cannot see me like this. It would undermine my authority, perhaps forever." George found his voice, though it cracked. "What do you need from us?" Shkara's laugh was bitter. "Isolation. Control. I need to not hunt you across this compound like prey, human. Because that is what every instinct in my body is screaming at me to do." Her tail lashed behind her, and George couldn't help but notice how it moved, powerful, sinuous, almost hypnotic. Eleanor's mind raced through everything she knew about Varric's biology. "Your metabolism runs hot. The heat cycle will exhaust you. You'll need hydration, nutrients, cooling." "I need him," Shkara growled, then seemed to catch herself. Her scales rippled with what might have been embarrassment. "Forgive me. The cycle makes it difficult to think clearly. But yes, Dr. Eleanor, your analysis is correct. I will need assistance to survive this without incident." What followed were 3 of the strangest days in human-alien relations history. Eleanor converted the commander's private quarters into a makeshift medical bay while George, despite his terror and confusion, stayed. Not because he was forced to. Shkara made it clear he could leave, but because he recognized the vulnerability in the fierce warrior's eyes. She was trapped in her own biology, and she needed help. Eleanor monitored Shkara's vitals while George did the seemingly impossible. He talked to her about Earth, about humanity's own struggles with base instincts and higher reasoning, about the time he'd accidentally insulted a Centaurian ambassador by refusing their ritual food offering. "So you've made a habit of diplomatic disasters?" Shkara asked during a lucid moment, her temperature finally beginning to stabilize on the 2nd day. George grinned. "I'm remarkably consistent." Something shifted in those hours. Shkara's initial predatory focus on George began to evolve. She listened to his stories, asked questions about human courtship rituals, and expressed genuine curiosity about the species that had stumbled into her biology. "With such spectacular accidental timing, we're not so different," Eleanor observed. watching the vital signs normalize. Humans fought our own biology for millennia. Instinct versus intellect. The struggle makes us who we are. On the third day, when the fever finally broke, Shkara stood on steady legs for the first time in 72 hours. She looked at George with clear eyes still intense, but controlled. "You stayed," she said simply. "You needed help." He replied, "My people have a saying. Those who see us at our weakest and do not exploit it are worthy of our strength." She extended her hand, human style. "The treaty still stands, George of Earth, but perhaps we might add a cultural exchange provision. It seems we have much to learn from each other." As they shook hands carefully, this time Eleanor couldn't help but smile. Humanity's first diplomatic crisis with the Verix had been resolved not through force or manipulation, but through simple compassion. Very HFY indeed.